Welcome to How to Sell More. Today, we're talking about how your network is your net worth with Charles Byrd, a Silicon Valley veteran and former director at a billion-dollar software company. Today, Charles is the go-to expert for entrepreneurs and businesses eager to not only connect with incredible like-minded people, but also to build a powerful network that consistently provides leads. I'm Mark Drager. Let's get into it. So Charles, many of the business owners that I work with, many people in my network, including, and I will be honest, including myself, we are customers of yours because you have somehow apparently come from nowhere over the last few years to be in every room, in every mastermind group, in every network. This isn't even hyperbole for me to say I was going to say every stage, not every stage, but on a lot of stages, because what you teach us business owners, for those of us who are introverted like me, for those of us who are not systems or process focused like me, you teach us how to make better connections, to get on other people's podcasts, to set up joint ventures and affiliates, to essentially turn these relationships of people we're meeting into really tactical and really strategic connections so we can all do more business together. And I don't know why other people don't teach us, but you are the man for it. So Charles, tell us, what are we getting wrong with affiliates? What are we getting wrong with joint ventures? How are we approaching networking wrong?
Well, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for having me on the show. So I think what a lot of people get wrong is they walk in a room and they have no specific goal for being there. They don't know what their winning outcomes are or exactly what they're looking for. Frequently, they may come into a room, and it's a normal human instinct, but they'll come into a room with the what's in it for me mindset instead of how can I be of service to others mindset. They may also bounce around a room thinking they're doing themselves a favor by meeting as many people as they can while they connect with none of those people. And then even if they do find enough synergy, they may share their contact information, not realizing that's pointless.
Look, here I am. You can follow up with me and do all of the work.
That approach is a disservice because no one will follow up. It's not because you're not amazing and they don't think what you're doing is cool. It's just because everyone's life is really busy. So by having a goal for an event, knowing who you are looking to connect with, looking for ways to be of service to others systematically, taking 100% responsibility for following up with people, and then guiding those follow-ups into winning outcomes. And winning outcomes could mean different things to different people. For me, it means someone's an ideal client, referral partner. They have events that would be ideal for me to speak at. Maybe they have a podcast like Mark's, And so just having a framework for those things and a method, a systematic method that takes the guesswork out of the process. A lot of people just don't have that kind of exposure. So they do their best, but opportunities just float past them all day and walk right out the door because they don't have a framework for it. Having that kind of framework, understanding it's better to have a small handful of deep, longer conversations than 20 tiny, short conversations, and then a systematic follow-up approach. It makes a massive difference in the outcomes people get.
I can speak now. I often wonder, when will the listeners get tired of me raving about the people I have on? But there's a reason why I specifically asked you to be here, because I was at an event last week, and just before we hit record, I was like, you know what, I have a few connections I've actually made with you because we've all, if you've been in personal development or thought leadership, you've heard of the reticular activating system. You've heard of the RAS. If you buy a new Jeep, suddenly you see Jeeps everywhere. If you suddenly, if you're looking for something, it's out there. And when I came to this event last week, for the first time, I didn't even realize you helped me with this, but I actually had a specific reason to be there. I had a list of people that I wanted to connect with, and halfway through the event, I realized I was never going to complete my list, and I had to refocus my time to go I need to get in front of these people. And I structured the conversations, especially one, in a much more forward way than I ever would, which is they were there for business. I was there for business. We were both there for business. We only had 15 minutes. How do we make the most of our time? Like as cool as it is to make friends, how do we make the most of our time? And there's 320 people at this event. I couldn't possibly meet everyone, even though I've been going there for years. And so I focused on fewer, deeper connections than trying to hit everyone. And as you just went through the summary, I realized I must have learned all of that from you.
I say fantastic. Then it means it always feels good to support people and help them get results and give them a framework for getting way more out of those kind of events and giving way more, because that's a whole part of the process. And good for you for concentrating, like slowing down and focusing on a few deeper conversations and relationships from that. Last weekend, I was in Utah spending some time with Russell Brunson and a few other folks. David Goggins was there and several other authors that the next day were speaking at a big event. And this party was 3 hours. There was only so much time to talk to people. I could have, of course, spent 6 or 9 hours in a room like that, but I only had 3 hours. So there were probably only 4 or 5 follow-ups that I had coming out of that, which I would have loved to have more, but if I tried to get more, I would have gotten less. So connecting with folks, hearing what they're up to in those 15 minutes you have, learning more about them, who they serve, and you're determining, is there a meaningful reason to connect and follow up and have a deeper conversation? At any event like that, I'm generalizing a little bit. You'll never land a deal. You will never land a client in that moment. You're not even trying to. You shouldn't try to. It should be about connecting enough to figure out there's enough synergy for a follow-up conversation post-event and getting that scheduled as quickly as possible, because there's a half-life to the warm and fuzzy feelings coming out of an event like that. So if you and I met at an event, had a great conversation, we'd be feeling really good about each other and the interaction and excited for the follow-up. But if neither one of us follows up for a day, 2 days, that warm and fuzzy feeling gets a little smaller.
Uh-oh. I got back on Thursday. It's now Monday, and I haven't done all of my follow-ups yet. Is it like it's over? It's over for me?
It's not over. Each day that goes by means there's less people that will actually engage and follow up. So it's not to say, no, if it's Thursday and it's Monday, you're fine. Get those out today and tomorrow. You'll be doing great.
So I know a big part of what I took away from this and a big part of your training is really, I think, 2 key areas. First of all, you mentioned this. What are your winning outcomes? Can you help us understand how to think about this and what this looks like? And then follow up to that is how to structure a really great conversation. So that way, if you know what your winning outcomes are, and again, what those look like, how do we get people there without making them feel used or like we're just cutting to the chase or that this is just business? How do we manage that?
Sure. Well, as you know, because you've gone through it, I have a very specific process that guides those conversations. And so a lovely way to make people feel not used is to not use them.
Of course.
So, but what I mean too is if people legitimately know that you're in their corner and you care about them and their goals and their clients, it changes how the whole interaction feels. If they know up front that you're looking out for them regardless of the outcomes for you, it changes the energy of a call faster than anything. And the way you do that is by building actual rapport with them. Listen to what they have going on. Ask them. Like, I think a typical 30-minute follow-up call, the amount of that call that should be about you is about 6% of the call. The rest of the call should be about them, 10 at most. So that if I'm jumping on with you, I'm like, Mark, tell me what you have going on. What are you working on that has you excited? Who's your ideal client? What are you working on where you need any like input or support or connections? If you know up front that I'm in it for you, it immediately changes the whole feeling of the conversation. People are, once they realize you're on their team, they're like, oh my goodness, okay. You can feel the conversation shift when it's not about you. And then legitimately see ways of serving and supporting them. I call it leveraging your superpowers. Each of us may have a different one, but mine happens to be my network. I can talk to almost anyone and I'll have a few good connections for them that meet a need they have. So let's dig into that for a second. Maybe they're redoing their website or branding and they need a connection. Send them to Mark is what I would do.
I agree.
Or maybe as they describe their ideal client, maybe you're like, hey, I've got the perfect referral for you. Are you up for referrals? Like you offer someone a connection like that, they're immediately on team Mark. Like they're like, what? All right. I like where this is going. And then as you're asking about what they're up to, you're also kind of making a mental list of ways you could work together. And there's a whole range of ways you could work together. You could become clients of each other one way or another or both. Maybe their client base is perfect for your offer. Maybe they have an audience or event that you could contribute value to. So by asking all about what they have going on, you can start making a mental list of ways you could work together. And then you choose internally, where's the biggest winning outcome between us, our audiences, our clients, each other? What's the best winning outcome for everybody? And then you guide the call straight into that particular winning outcome. Because without a framework like this, people will get on follow-up calls that lead absolutely nowhere. I've teed up intros that easily could have been worth hundreds of thousands or millions, but because neither one knew how to guide a call or get to a winning outcome, it's like sleepwalking right past each other.
Yeah, ships passing in the night kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's why having these frameworks makes any type of business that involves relationships go a lot further, a lot faster.
And so depending on the type of business you may have, as you mentioned, there's contributing to other people's events. So if you have a speech or a keynote, this makes total sense. If you have a podcast, this makes sense. If you have a blog or do content marketing, you can interview the other people and bring them on board. Walk me through, though, embedded partnerships, because this is one of the things that I think most people overlook. Some people may be familiar with affiliate marketing, where you have someone else sell your product for you and you're going to give them a commission. Maybe some of us sell through direct channels or wholesale or what have you, if you're listening to this. But embedded partnerships is a really interesting area that I don't think people are tapping into.
Sure. So I'll briefly list out 4 partnership types, including embedded partnerships, and we'll dive into it. So a few examples of partnership types would be presenting to other people's groups, whether high-level groups or broad lists, referral partnerships, where you're sending a warm connection to each other or, to whoever's receiving it, embedded partnerships, which I'll go into in a second, and then social JVs, things like this podcast. By inviting me to be a guest, it's your audience and we're partnering where you're sharing value through what we're talking about and I'm getting exposure to your audience. That's a partnership itself.
And potentially, because you're going to be so blown away by being on my podcast, we're going to give you the assets, we're going to give you the swipe files, you're going to want to email this out to everyone, right?
Definitely. And that grows your following and exposure as well. Two-way street there. So embedded partnerships, there's several different flavors of this, but I'll give a few examples. One is when your product or service is inside of another person's offer. I'll give you an example of that. I had 3 clients on stage with Tony Robbins last month, and not only were they on stage with Tony, their offers are inside of Tony's because I taught them how to create embedded partnerships. So every time Tony sells a business mastery offer, my clients' offers are inside it. So they're not doing the sales, they're not doing the lead gen, it's Tony's audience. Tony makes a sale, they get a client. So that's one type. Another would be to be an expert in a community. I'm the joint venture expert in John Assaraf's Winning the Game of Business, in Eben Pagan's Virtual Coach program, in the Genius Network, in Founders Board, doing joint venture workshops, in a mastermind that you're in. I'm coming in next year as the joint venture expert in that group. So not only is the founder coming on as a client, I'll be booked to speak 3 times next year, teaching that whole community how to think about joint ventures, how to execute joint ventures, ways to connect and provide value first. So by being a leader within the community itself, you automatically get a lot more exposure, authority. You end up getting clients because you are the expert in that community and you know how to serve and support. So any one of us with our particular expertise can do that. You can do that as the branding expert. And like each of us can come into a community and become the go-to expert in it.
And not only can you do this, sometimes your superpower, and I don't know how you feel about this, I'd be interested in getting your advice. Sometimes your superpower or your gift or your skill set is even slightly outside of maybe what your business is. And so you talked about Matt Andrews, the private mastermind group I've been a part of for a few years. And I've gone down now for 5 conferences and I help them direct the entire 3-day event. Now, I don't sell that service. That's like not a service I sell, but I do know that I care a lot about them. I'm connected directly with leadership. I'm running stuff behind the stage. Last week, we were hanging out with Hulk Hogan, which was cool, but I had certain access because I'm directing the show for the events, even though it's not a service that we do. And people would come up to me and say, like, they know me now and they can see me on stage and they see my face. And if you're emceeing events or doing whatever it is in support, they see that I'm involved somehow. And they go like, oh, can you do this for us? And I go, no. I can't. I do this other thing. Now let me introduce you to this other thing. But I kind of equate it to the church I used to go to. The person playing guitar or drumming is like a lawyer or an accountant, but they're part of a community and they happen to have this other gift or skill set and they can still pour into the community in some way to provide some leadership. And so I've even tried to find ways like 1 or 2 degrees removed from maybe even what my business does, just to get active, get involved, get connected with leadership, get exposure, all of those things. Is that something that, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
It's very smart to do that. Now, I say ideally you're able to come in and provide your core expertise as that value add, but on the path to relationship building, what you're doing is absolutely perfect. So a lot of different communities, like I have a photography and film and music background, different creative things like that. So like once Eben Pagan invited me to a mastermind and I noticed there was no photographer. So I came up to him and his wife, Annie. I'm like, you want some pictures taken? And they were like, definitely. We never have pictures from these events. That would be awesome. So snap off some shots. Annie's thrilled because there's all these great shots of her on stage. Then I share it with them. It brings our relationship closer. I saw something that there was a need that I had a skill set to fill, just like you have the skill set to fill. And this is what providing value first looks like. You're there providing value first, and that builds and strengthens a relationship. And then as you get closer with folks because you legitimately care about them and what they're up to and their success, then the opportunities start coming from all directions. Like that Eben Pagan example. From there, he invited me into a high-level peer mastermind group that we met every month or every week for 3+ years. In fact, I was hanging out with Eben week before last in Austin. And in that group was Jeff Walker, Stu McLaren, Marie Forleo, Jay Abraham, like 70 people deep of the best marketers in the world. So by going out of your way to build a relationship, provide value first, that's what actually creates real long-lasting partnerships, opportunities, and really strong relationships.
Well, I can't just say, if you're listening to this right now and you're like, this has never been a strength of mine, it hasn't been a strength of mine. If you feel introverted, if you're not quite sure how to handle conversations, or when you go to a large event, a private event, a networking event, gosh, I used to hate private dinners because not only do you have to pick your seat for the whole night, but you're kind of talking to the person to your left or right or across from you the whole night. But now, you know what? It doesn't even bother me. I even invited a few people to join me at breakfast because I realized like I could talk to anyone about anything. Like this isn't so hard or intimidating. And so if you're struggling with this, then I would recommend definitely following up with Charles, and all of his details will be in the show notes. Check out Pure JV. This isn't an ad. I'm not even an affiliate or anything like that. It's just something that I believe in because I have worked through it and seen a lot of value out of it over the last 9 months. And so that's my little soapbox. Now, I do want to wrap up the conversation with the question that I ask of everyone who's on, which is, what is your number one tip or strategy to help us sell more?
Number one strategy to sell more is to connect more. Connection equals opportunity. Connection equals conversion. My friend Richard Linder, who runs the Founders Board Mastermind with Roland Fraser and Ryan Dice, he and I were prepping for me to do a JV workshop to that whole community. And he came up with that as I was going through my overview. He's like, connection equals conversion. And it is true. By taking a little extra time to connect with people and build relationships with them, it opens the floodgates to not only work with them, but to work with their client base, to work with their community, to get referrals. There's so many ways to win by just actually building better relationships. So ping someone in your phone, ping a friend on LinkedIn or Facebook, share something you think they'll find interesting, or just reach out and say, it's been a while. I'd love to jump on and hear what you're working on that has you excited. And then listen for ways to serve and support, align those winning outcomes, and you absolutely will sell more.
Okay, to wrap up this conversation, let's get into the 3-point roundup. Number 1, it's all about genuine connections, which means you got to be authentic. You got to avoid a utilitarian approach, let's say, where you just go from connection to connection where people are feeling used and only a means to the end. Because really, at the end of the day, you want to build relationships that go back and forth. Because at the end of the day, you want to build reciprocal relationships with people. Number 2, you have the opportunity to become a community leader, which means you're put in a position where you can demonstrate your expertise. You're able to offer people a tremendous amount of value. And if you engage the right people the right way, consistently, they will get to know you, they will start to like you, and more than anything, they'll start to trust you. And number 3, you have to approach your conversation strategically, looking for a win-win outcome. That means you're not using people and they're not using you. They're not above you. They're not below you. You're approaching every single conversation looking for the opportunity to create a win-win for both of you, because that is honestly how to turn your network into your net worth. I want to thank Mr. Charles Byrd for joining us today. You can learn more about him by heading over to his website, charlesbyrd.com. You can also find him on Facebook under his name, Byrd is with a Y, or on Instagram at Charles_Byrd_. Now, while you're over there on Instagram, why not also give us a follow at Sales Loop Brand? And one last thing, if you made it this far into the show, you really should subscribe. Why would you do that? Well, each and every week, I share practical tips and strategies just like what Charles shared with us to supercharge your business growth and to boost sales. With that, we will wrap up this episode. I am Mark Drager. Thanks so much for listening.